I'm now coming towards the end of week 9 on the Newcastle Diet to try and reverse my type 2 diabetes. I've been asked some questions by viewers and friends alike, and 3 questions came up the most often. So today, join me for my stroll as I attempt to answer those 3 questions, let you all know how I'm doing, and help people who are starting this diet or are part of the way through it. Afternoon all, Mutton here again, back at Millgate Fields. I'm afraid at the moment there's a bit of a limit to places I can go to legally, so I'm afraid it's going to have to be the same area as usual. But it's quite nice, and in a month or two's time, hopefully, we'll be visiting greener pastures. I'm so pleased that some of you have asked me questions, and the same 3 questions tend to come up very frequently, whether it be by private message or social media. So I'll do my best to answer them today. Hopefully anybody starting out on this diet might get an inkling as to how things are at the end or the fag end of the diet. Now, the one that I get asked the most is quite a simple one. How do you feel? Well, in a nutshell, to be honest, not actually that different from when I started. Now that might sound odd, you might think I've got bundles and bundles of energy from losing all this weight, but something you have to remember that I was already fairly mobile, and 60 kilograms is quite a lot of weight to be overweight. In fact, it was probably 65 kilos too heavy when I started. So whatever I weigh in at the end of week 9, it'll be at least 40 kilos overweight. I'm sure I will notice a difference at some point, but maybe not just yet. I suspect somebody who was carrying 90 kilos and had gone down to 75 on this would actually feel a much bigger difference. But I will say I feel less breathless, which is a positive sign. And that dovetails in nicely to the second question I get asked a lot, which is, what about physical changes? Well, yes, I've noticed a few of those. I now have a triple chin instead of a quadruple chin, or maybe it's a treble instead of a double. My belly is smaller than it was. Obviously, when I get dressed, I can see how many spare tyres there are around my stomach. And my trousers are beginning not to fit because they're way too loose, which is a positive sign. And some of my polo shirts are getting a bit big as well. So those are all good signs. Also, many of you probably don't know, because I haven't shown it before, is in January I had a blister on my foot which turned purple. I had it checked out and it was apparently a blood blister, and my sugar was still pretty bad at that stage, so it's taken a long time to heal, but it's finally come close to healing. You might want to look away here because the pictures of before and not quite after might be a bit gory to some, but fascinating to others. So there we are. So the most important thing physically, of course, is the blood sugar being right. The nasty things that can happen if you become diabetic, foot injuries being especially of concern, because some people end up having their foot or part of it amputated because they don't treat it quickly enough. So these are things that you have to look at and are an illustration of why you just don't want diabetes. So if you get it, don't ignore it. Also, those who have been following my progress will know that I've been drinking quite a bit more water than I had been doing in the first place. I moved up to about 4 litres in the last week or two, so we'll see whether that has any effect, because a couple of people suggested really I ought to be drinking more than the 3 I was generally drinking beforehand. So that brings me on to the mental side. Now, this is the toughest bit, because it does take a certain amount of fortitude to go through with this. And to be honest, I was disappointed at the end of week 8 when I realised I had to carry on for another 4 weeks. Normally for people, they're done after 8 weeks. To say I've been pining for a real meal is an understatement. And yes, I do feel hungry, and I try and fill my belly with water or consommé or something like that, and it just about does the trick. But for those of you struggling at an early stage of the diet, just think of the big prize that awaits. You can get through it. It's not easy. Find things to do that don't involve food and drink, and you'll be there before you know it. Again, I can't stress highly enough the importance of keeping yourself occupied. Find something to do, learn something, whether it's a new skill or just something of passing interest. It'll take your mind off it. And you might say, oh, I'm locked down, there's nothing to do, may as well have some nice food. Well, think about it. If you make the sacrifice now, you'll be able to do some of these things all in moderation towards the start of the summer. So I hope I filled you in now with how it feels, or how one might feel after 2 weeks of low carb and 62 days of 3 meal replacement shakes a day. I hope it's been useful for people who are considering going on this diet, or people who are on this diet. As always, don't take my advice. I'm just showing you what I'm doing to help myself. Ask your doctor first, because my medical knowledge is not quite zero, but not far off it. I'll be bringing you the week 9 weigh-in and blood sugar test later in the week. Might have to be indoors, that one, because the weather forecast is not very good at all. I think even this grey overcast day is the best I'm getting for the next week or so. And I'm going to wrap it up and say bye for now. And don't forget, you can't beat a bit of mutton.